Last Christmas Eve, while I was fighting to keep a man breathing in the ICU, my in-laws forced my 10-year-old daughter to stand in a corner of their dining room for nearly 4 hours.
She was hungry. She was shaking.
And hanging from her neck was a piece of torn cardboard with 2 words written in thick black marker.
Family Disgrace. My name is Callie Monroe.
I'm 36 years old, a critical care nurse, and a widow raising my daughter alone in the suburbs of Nashville, Tennessee. That night, while I was trying to save a patient's life at St. Dominic's Regional Medical Center, my in-laws decided my daughter needed to be taught a lesson.
Her crime?
She told the truth at the dinner table.
I didn't scream when I found out. I didn't argue.
I didn't beg for an explanation. Instead, I drove home, tucked my daughter into bed, and opened a box I hadn't touched in 3 years. The files my late husband left behind. Inside that box was something Diane Hargrove never expected me to find. And within 48 hours, her phone wouldn't stop ringing.
Not with apologies. With panic.
But before I tell you what happened next, take a second to like and subscribe if you enjoy stories like this.
And drop your city and local time in the comments. I always love seeing where everyone is listening from.
Now let me take you back to December 24th, the night everything started. The lights on our Christmas tree were still blinking when the hospital called. I had set the table for 2, a ritual I started after losing Derek. Small, deliberate traditions to make the holidays feel like something instead of nothing. A pan of homemade chicken pot pie cooling on the counter, 2 stockings hung above the fireplace, and a little clay ornament my daughter Hazel had painted herself at school, a lopsided star with her name scratched into the back.
Hazel was 10. She still believed in magic. I was determined to protect that.
We were 20 minutes from sitting down when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read St. Dominic's ICU.
My charge nurse's voice was tight. A patient had coded. They were understaffed. They needed me.
I stood in the kitchen holding the phone, looking at the chicken pot pie.
There was no one to call.
My sister lived in Boise. My neighbor was already traveling. The only option within 15 minutes was Diane Hargrove's annual Christmas dinner, Derek's mother, 40 minutes south on Briarwood Circle in Brentwood. Diane answered on the second ring, her voice unusually warm and cheerful. Of course, bring Hazel.
We'd love to have her. Something about that warmth felt off.
I filed it away and didn't stop. I knelt in front of Hazel, straightened her collar, and handed her the small wrapped gift she'd made for her grandmother, a painted wooden ornament, green and gold, tied with ribbon. Grandma Diane will take care of you tonight. Okay? Mom has to go help someone who's really sick.
Hazel hugged me in the doorway. It was 26 degrees.
Her breath came out in small white clouds. Come back before midnight, Mom. I promise. I didn't keep that promise.
An ICU on Christmas Eve is its own kind of war zone.
That night we had a 72-year-old man in respiratory failure, 2 patients post-op from earlier in the day, a staff shortage, and the blinking light someone had strung over the nurse's station that felt almost cruel given the chaos beneath them.
I worked on autopilot. Check the vent. Adjust the drip. Document. Move.
But somewhere in the back of my mind, I kept drifting 10 miles north, to Diane's house, where my daughter sat at a long table surrounded by people who shared her last name but had never once asked what book she was reading or what she wanted to be when she grew up. At 10:22 p.m., I caught 90 seconds behind a supply cart. 3 missed calls from Hazel. 1 text, sent at 9:47 p.m. Mom, please come get me.
No emojis. Hazel always used emojis. I called back immediately. But it wasn't Hazel's voice that answered.
Callie, it's Diane. Her tone was measured, smooth, the voice she used at charity luncheons.
Hazel's fine. She's just being overly sensitive. Focus on your patients. Can I talk to her? She's with the cousins. I'll have her call you later. The line went dead.
I stood there for a moment, every instinct I had trained over 12 years of nursing telling me something was wrong. Then a monitor alarmed in Bay 3, and I ran. It wasn't until 12:55 a.m., changing out of my scrubs in the locker room, that I reopened Hazel's text and saw the photo she'd attached. I'd missed it in the rush. The image was dark and blurry, taken from a low angle as if she'd hidden the phone in her lap and tapped the screen blindly. I could make out the corner of a room, the edge of a dining chair, and across Hazel's chest, the bottom of something rectangular.
Cardboard. Black marker. 2 words. Family disgrace. I was in my car in under 3 minutes.
The porch light at Diane Hargrove's house was off. Every other home on Briarwood Circle was lit up with Christmas lights, but number 114 sat in darkness, like the night had quietly erased it.
I knocked once. Then harder.
Diane opened the door in a silk robe, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, looking as though she'd been settled in for hours.
It was 1:35 a.m. My daughter was still there. I stepped past her without a word.
The house smelled like pine candles and dish soap. The long dining table had been cleared. Chairs pushed neatly in. Everything orderly, except for one thing.
Hazel.
She sat on a small bench in the far corner, her Christmas dress wrinkled, her eyes swollen. A piece of cardboard rested in her lap, tied around her neck with a loop of brown twine. The yarn had left a red mark on her skin. I crossed the room, knelt in front of her, and lifted the sign away. The handwriting, looping, deliberate, was unmistakably Diane's. The same penmanship from every birthday card she'd ever sent.
Family disgrace.
I folded the cardboard, slipped it into my coat pocket, lifted my daughter into my arms, and walked out of that house without saying a single word to Diane Hargrove. Not because I had nothing to say. Because the things I had to say were going to be written on legal paper. 4 minutes into the drive, Hazel spoke. Her voice was flat the way children's voices get when they've learned their feelings don't count.
I said something at dinner, Mom. About Uncle Cole.
What did you say? Last week at Grandma's house, I heard him on the phone in the hallway.
He said he needed money from my college account.
The one great-grandpa made for me.
She tugged a loose thread from her dress.
At dinner, Aunt Brianna was talking about Uncle Cole's new truck. So I asked if he paid for it with my college money. My grip tightened on the steering wheel.
Everyone got really quiet. Uncle Cole said I was lying.
Grandma Diane said I needed to learn what happens to liars in the Hargrove family.
She paused. She went to the garage and got the cardboard. She wrote on it.
She made me wear it and told everyone not to give me food until I apologized. Did anyone say anything? Anyone at all?
Hazel shook her head slowly. Aunt Brianna laughed.
The cousins went to the other room. Nobody said anything, Mom. I pulled over on the side of Magnolia Ridge Road, 3 blocks from home, unbuckled my seatbelt, and wrapped both arms around my daughter.
She wasn't crying.
She was shaking, the way a person shakes when they've already run out of tears hours ago.
Hazel, you are not a liar. You told the truth. And I am so proud of you. She looked up at me with wide, uncertain eyes.
Mom, am I a bad person?
No, sweetheart.
You're the bravest person I know.
She fell asleep before we reached the driveway.
I carried her inside, made her a peanut butter sandwich, and sat beside her bed while she ate it in slow, half-awake bites. Then I read 2 chapters of Charlotte's Web until her breathing finally evened out. When I was sure she was asleep, I walked into the hallway, looked up at the top shelf of the closet, and reached for the box labeled Derek, Documents. I'd shoved it up there the week after his funeral and never opened it. Every time I saw his handwriting, it felt like the air left the room. I set the box on the kitchen table, made coffee, and opened it. Insurance papers I'd already handled. Our marriage certificate. Hazel's birth certificate. Photos from our honeymoon in the Smoky Mountains. And at the very bottom, a thick manila envelope sealed with packing tape. I slid a knife under the seal. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a certified quitclaim deed, dated March 9th, 4 months before Derek's accident, transferring complete ownership of the property at 402 Magnolia Ridge Road from Derek Hargrove to Callie Monroe Hargrove. Signed. Notarized. Stamped by the Davidson County Register of Deeds. The second was a printed county property record confirming the deed had been filed. Legal. Final. The third was a handwritten note on yellow legal paper, folded twice. Callie, this house belongs to you and Hazel. I made sure of it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. D. I read the note 3 times. By the 3rd time, my hands were shaking. Not with grief. With the slow, burning realization that Derek had tried to protect us long before I ever knew we needed protecting. For 3 years, I had lived in this house convinced that Diane Hargrove could take it back with a single phone call. That belief had kept me quiet through every icy comment at family dinners, every passive-aggressive remark, every time Diane reminded me, just loudly enough, that the Hargroves had owned that land for 2 generations.
She was technically right. The house was still in Hargrove hands. It was in mine.
I opened my laptop and pulled up the Davidson County property records.
Typed in our address.
Owner of record, Callie M. Hargrove. I closed the laptop slowly, held Derek's note against my chest, and then opened a new browser tab and searched Tennessee property owner rights, occupant removal, 30-day notice. It was 3:52 a.m. on December 26th.
My daughter was asleep.
And for the first time in 3 years, I understood exactly where I stood.
On my own land.
At 8:17 a.m., Margaret called. Her voice was warm in the rehearsed way, the voice she used for the church welcome committee. "Callie, honey, I hope we can put this little misunderstanding behind us." Hazel made a serious accusation in front of the family. She needed to understand that actions have consequences.
I said nothing.
Diane hated silence and filled it immediately. "And Callie, I shouldn't need to remind you, you are living on Hargrove property. It would be unfortunate if this kind of drama complicated that arrangement." I looked at the quitclaim deed on the table in front of me. Davidson County seal. Derek's signature.
"I understand, Diane. Thank you for calling."
I hung up. Then I saved the recording.
Tennessee is a one-party consent state.
I created a new folder on my desktop and named it Red. 20 minutes later, a text from Cole arrived. "No greeting, just anger. Your kid has no business eavesdropping on private conversations and running her mouth.
Teach her some respect. Screenshot. Save."
40 seconds later, "If you make this into something, I'll tell people about your breakdown after Derek died.
Mom has everything documented. Don't push me." Screenshot. Save.
Then, without the Hargroves, you're just a night shift nurse with a lying kid.
Remember that.
Screenshot.
Save.
3 texts. Each one terrified. Each one going directly into the red folder. My friend Dana Webb showed up at noon with coffee, bagels, and a new coloring book for Hazel. I laid everything on the kitchen table. The cardboard sign, Hazel's photo, the texts, the recorded call, and finally, the deed. Dana picked it up. "Read it. Read it again.
Set it down."
He did this 4 months before the accident. He never told me.
She looked at me steadily.
He knew his family, Callie, and he made sure you had somewhere to stand. Dana had a name for me, Marcus Reed. Estate and property attorney in Green Hills.
Thorough. Fast.
"He doesn't deal in drama," she said.
"He deals in documents."
I called his office at 12:30 p.m.
He could see me December 27th at 2 p.m.
I took the appointment. Marcus Reed's office was on the 3rd floor of a stone building in Green Hills, above a small coffee house. The whole stairwell smelled like espresso and old wood. He shook my hand, gestured to the chair across from his desk, and said simply, "Start with the property." I opened the red folder and placed the deed in front of him. He studied it for nearly 2 minutes in silence. Then he opened the Davidson County Records portal, entered the address, and turned the monitor toward me. "Ms. Hargrove, this deed is valid and properly recorded. You are the sole legal owner of 402 Magnolia Ridge Road, the house, the structure, and the full 0.9-acre parcel.
No liens. No co-owners.
No encumbrances." I exhaled slowly. "Now," Marcus continued, "tell me about the college fund."
I told him everything.
Derek's father, Richard Hargrove, had opened a Tennessee Best College savings account for Hazel when she was born. The account had originally held just over $50,000. Diane was listed as custodian. Hazel had overheard Cole talking about needing to pull from it. Marcus submitted the records request to the financial institution. Then he paused, tapping his pen once. "One more thing." He turned his monitor again. "I ran a standard property check before our meeting. Your address, 402 Magnolia Ridge, is currently listed under a Tennessee property tax relief exemption for primary owner occupants."
I frowned.
"I didn't file for that."
"I know."
"You didn't." He tapped the screen. "The exemption was filed under the name Diane Hargrove. Using your address."
The room went quiet.
"Your mother-in-law, Marcus said evenly, has been claiming a tax benefit on a property she does not legally own.
For 3 years. He let that land.
That qualifies as tax fraud, Ms. Hargrove. At the county level.
3 years.
3 years of quiet discounts on a house that wasn't hers. 3 years of threatening me with that same house every time she wanted leverage.
And the whole time, she'd been quietly collecting the benefit of it.
How much are we talking?
I asked. Marcus ran the numbers. Roughly $3,000 per year in reduced taxes.
Over 3 years, nearly $9,000 in unpaid taxes, plus a 25% civil penalty. Total county liability, approximately $11,500. Options, Marcus said, folding his hands. First, a 30-day notice to vacate addressed to Cole Hargrove regarding the workshop behind your home. Second, a formal complaint to the Davidson County Assessor regarding the fraudulent exemption. Third, depending on the college fund records, a civil action for misappropriated education funds.
He looked at me directly. Each is independent.
You can choose 1, 2, all 3.
I looked at the folder on his desk. The cardboard sign. The texts. The deed.
All 3, I said. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. Marcus paused with his pen in the air, studying me.
I've practiced law for 22 years. Family property disputes. Trust fraud.
Custodian violations. But 3 separate violations from the same household, against the same person.
He shook his head slowly.
That's unusual. I'm a critical care nurse, Mr. Reed.
I don't panic. I triage.
A faint smile crossed his face. He pulled out a fresh legal pad, uncapped his pen, and we spent the next hour drafting 3 documents that would arrive at the Hargrove household before New Year's Eve. The records came back 10 days later. 21 withdrawals. 18 months. Every single transfer routed to a personal checking account belonging to Cole M. Hargrove. Total withdrawn, $4,000 to $7,200. Every withdrawal authorized by Diane as custodian. Not a single transaction tied to tuition, books, or any qualified educational expense. Derek's father had worked 30 years in commercial logistics to save that money for his granddaughter. And it was gone. Transferred piece by piece into whatever financial crater Cole had dug for himself, with Diane holding the shovel. The demand letter had given them until January 27th to repay the funds. January 27th came and went.
No payment. No attorney. No response.
On January 28th, Marcus filed the civil complaint in Davidson County General Sessions Court.
Conversion.
Breach of fiduciary duty. Full restitution of $4,000 to $7,200, plus attorney fees, court costs, and the applicable federal tax penalties for improper 529 equivalent withdrawals. Total judgment requested, approximately $52,000.
The court doesn't shout. It stamps. It files. It dates.
And eventually, it sends someone to your door. The process server arrived at 402 Magnolia Ridge Road on a Tuesday afternoon in late January. Cole was in the workshop behind the house, still dragging his feet on the 30-day notice, and the country music from inside the workshop cut out the moment the server knocked on the open door frame. I watched from the kitchen window. Cole stepped out, wiping his hands on a rag.
He looked at the manila envelope.
His expression moved through confusion, irritation, and finally to something deeper, the recognition of a man who had told himself this moment would never come.
He refused to take the envelope.
The server placed it on the workbench, noted the refusal, and walked back to his car.
Under Tennessee law, service was complete. Cole called Diane.
20 minutes later, her silver Camry rolled up to the edge of my driveway and stopped.
The gate was closed.
I'd installed it the previous week.
A simple metal gate with a padlock.
Private property.
Permission required.
Diane stood outside that gate for 5 minutes. I timed it. She gripped the metal rail with both hands and stared at the house, my house, with an expression I had never once seen on her face in 7 years.
Not anger. Not indignation. Fear.
After a long moment, Diane Hargrove let go of the gate, got back into her car, and drove away without a single word.
I closed the kitchen curtain, sat down at the table,
and exhaled in the way that only happens when something you've been bracing for years, finally passes.
The civil case concluded in March. Cole never appeared in court. Marcus requested a default judgment and the judge granted it. $4,000 to $7,200 in misappropriated education funds, $3,800 in attorney fees and court costs, plus the applicable federal penalties. Total judgment, $51,400. Wage garnishment began the following week. Cole had just started a job in a distribution warehouse. A portion of every paycheck would now be automatically redirected toward that judgment for years. The county tax fraud investigation concluded in February. The Davidson County assessor confirmed the homestead exemption filed in Diane's name was fraudulent. The county issued a notice, back taxes plus penalties, totaling just over $11,000, due within 90 days. Diane didn't have the money. Her attorney requested an extension. The county offered a payment plan, with interest. Child Protective Services concluded their investigation in late February, finding substantiated emotional abuse and neglect of a minor. Diane Hargrove listed as primary subject. Cole listed as contributing party. Recommendation: no unsupervised contact with Hazel until completion of a court-approved family counseling program. Diane never enrolled. The call from Diane came in early February, on a Saturday morning. Hazel was drawing at the kitchen table. I walked to the bedroom and closed the door before I answered. Her voice was different. Smaller. The polished warmth was gone. I know I don't have the right to call you. You don't, I said. A long pause. Her breathing was audible through the phone. What I did to Hazel, the sign, I went too far. I was angry. I know that now. I waited. She's all I have left of Derek, she whispered. Please don't take her from me. I closed my eyes for a moment, not out of sympathy, but because I needed the next words to be exact. Diane, I'm not taking Hazel from you. I'm protecting her from what you did. Those are not the same thing. Silence. When you complete the counseling program CPS recommended, a licensed therapist, not a pastor, you can contact Marcus Reed's office to discuss supervised visitation. That is my boundary. It is not negotiable. Do not contact me directly. Do not contact Hazel. I hung up. The call lasted 4 to 9 seconds. I checked the log and added the record to the red folder. Old habits. In March, I opened a new college savings account for Hazel. Me, as sole custodian. I transferred the $3,000 that remained from the original account, the small remnant of what Richard Hargrove had built, into the new plan. It wasn't much, but it was clean and it was protected. Marcus finalized the garnishment order. The math was simple and relentless. Through the hospital's employee assistance program, I met with a financial advisor, something I'd never done before because life had always been too loud. She helped me set up an automatic contribution to Hazel's new account. $150 a month. Small and steady. At average compounded returns over the next 8 years, Hazel would still have a meaningful foundation by 18. It won't be $50,000, I told the advisor. She smiled. It doesn't have to be. It just has to belong to her. One evening in April, after Hazel fell asleep, I returned to Derek's box one last time. Not for legal documents. For a letter I'd noticed back in December but hadn't been ready to open. It was sealed with one line written across the front in Derek's blocky handwriting. For Hazel. Open on your 18th birthday. I broke my own rule. I opened it. Ladybug, if you're reading this, you're 18 now. I owe you a lot of explanations. But here's the one that matters most. You deserve every good thing this world has to offer. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you don't deserve a seat at the table. Your mom and I made sure you'd always have one. Trust her. She's the strongest person I've ever known, even when she doesn't see it herself. I love you past the moon. Dad. I stood in the hallway with one hand against the wall because the floor felt unsteady. Then I folded the letter carefully, returned it to the envelope, and placed it back in the box beside the deed. For the first time in 3 years, I cried. Not the drowning kind. The kind that cleans something out of you. May arrived in Nashville the way spring always does, slowly, then all at once. The dogwood tree outside our kitchen window bloomed overnight, white blossoms against pale morning sky. On the first Saturday of the month, I finally took down the Christmas lights. Hazel helped, carefully unwinding each strand from the porch railing.
Can we leave the small ones by the front door? She asked. Just those? Yes, I said. Some lights are worth keeping. Hazel was seeing her therapist every 2 weeks now. She'd started a journal. No one had suggested it. She'd just started. Writing things down helps me put them somewhere that isn't my chest, she told me one evening.
She also joined the school book club.
Her first recommendation was Charlotte's Web. Her teacher emailed me afterward. Hazel presented the book to the class today with a confidence I rarely see in 5th grade. She told everyone it's about telling the truth even when no one wants to hear it. She's becoming a real voice in this room. I read that email 3 times. Travis's old workshop became Hazel's art studio. We painted the walls together, soft yellow, because Hazel said yellow was the color of mornings starting over. I mounted a pegboard for her supplies, set a small desk by the window where the afternoon light came in strong, and let her hang whatever she wanted on the walls. She hung a drawing she'd made of 2 stick figures, one tall, one small, standing in front of a house with a triangle roof and a round knob door. Across the bottom, in careful block letters, our house. I framed it. It hangs in the hallway now, right across from the closet where Derek's box sits on the shelf. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just there, the way all the things that shaped you eventually find their proper place. There are things I understand now that I couldn't see 3 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even the morning I walked out of Diane Hargrove's house with my daughter in my arms. I used to believe that keeping the peace meant staying silent.
That endurance was the same as strength.
That the right thing to do when someone diminished you was to hold your breath and wait for it to pass. But peace that requires a child to stand hungry in a corner, a sign around her neck, written in her grandmother's handwriting, isn't peace. It's silence wearing a polite face. The real turning point wasn't the legal filings, or the certified letters, or the court judgment. It was a smaller, quieter moment. The moment I understood that protecting Hazel had to come before protecting anyone else's comfort. Family isn't a last name.
It isn't a shared table at Christmas. It isn't who shows up to inherit.
Family is defined by who makes a child feel safe when the world tries to make her feel small. And sometimes the most powerful thing a parent can do is simply refuse to look away. If this story resonated with you, if any moment felt familiar, tap like so it can reach someone else who might need to hear it today. Stories like this travel because people pass them forward, not because of algorithms. And if you've ever had to draw a line to protect yourself or your child, share your experience in the comments. You'd be surprised how many people find strength just knowing they are not the only ones who've walked this road. Subscribe to Reddit Family Secrets and turn on notifications for more stories about quiet courage and the truth that changes everything.
I'll see you in the next one.